Hey everyone, I'm Jens Anso. We're in my headquarters here in my shop. Today I'm going to talk to you about Launch 15. And maybe you'll ask yourself, what in the heck is Launch 15? I'm so happy you asked me that question. And if you followed me for a while and you know what Launch 15 is, well, then you're in the know, and then you can sit with your little smirk and say, I already knew that. Today is kind of a follow along in the shop where I'll show you a bunch of stuff, how I prepare for these online knife shows, and also I will take you through the process of doing my customized Zippolighter here. It has my Crown A insignia, 3 lions, 3 crowned lions nonetheless, from the Danish coat of arms, and everything starts out with a regular armored Zippo brass lighter here. One of the reasons why I make these Zippos is I've always had a fascination with these old gasoline lighters, Zippo specifically, and I wanted to be able to make some merchandise with my logo on it, with some cool story to the brand. So what I've been doing is I've been finding these vintage military insignia from old Danish uniforms. This is the coat of arms, the 3 crowned lions. I have from the Navy the crowned anchor, I call this hard seas. And I have this gauntlet with a sword, I call that arms and armor. All of these military insignia has a meaning to me as a Dane, and obviously a meaning to the company Anso of Denmark because of the story behind this. And I just think it's really cool. And that's all the reason I ever needed to build these lighters. I took a course in goldsmithing to learn to silver solder. Please let me know in the comments what the right way of pronouncing this is. Remember, English is my second language. I'm gonna start out by preparing the surfaces on the lighter. I already prepared the back side of these insignia buttons here, and then get started. We mill out these sterling silver A's out of plates of silver, and they need a little preparation as well. Launch 15 is an online knife show platform that I started in the end of 2021. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the reasoning why. Maybe you already know what I'm talking about, but we couldn't travel, we couldn't do anything of the cool stuff we wanted to do. So I started doing a monthly online knife show. I did that for consecutive 18 months in a row. 1 show per month, and that kind of wore me down a little bit. It was great fun, but imagine preparing for a online knife show, or a knife show in any case, once a month. That was a little much. After 18 months of doing that, last year in May, I changed the format to be a quarterly online knife show. So May 15th is approaching really fast, and that's where I do my next show. When you are watching this, it will be May 16th, so it's already taken place, but still click the link below and you'll see some of the cool things that happened on this month's show. So I'm adding floss to the part. Floss acts as a cleaner, really. So once you start heating up, everything is clean, and it will allow the silver solder to flow out more evenly. And it removes, in my understanding at least, all foreign objects and allows for a very clean solder. Here I place these tiny bits of solder around the edge of the insignia. So once it needs critical temperature, it will automatically flow into where it's needed. Knife shows is a creative outlet for me where I am allowed to work on anything that I want to do. On a regular day-to-day basis, I do a lot of work on orders. I still decide which knives I accept orders for, but still I'm building a knife to the customer's specifications. When I prepare knives and tools and other stuff for a knife show, I make exactly what pops into my mind, and usually I will make a knife exactly like I would want to carry that piece. So it gives me a huge freedom to just dive into exploring new material, new textures, try a different finish on a blade, stuff like that. And that sparks a lot of energy in me, and that also puts a lot of inspiration into designing new stuff, working on other projects. All in all, knife shows are incredibly important to me. If we go back a few years, I would generally do 3 to 4 knife shows a year, 2 or 3 knife shows in the US and 1 in Europe. And a few years ago, due to the pandemic, we couldn't travel. Knife shows were closed down all across the world. So that's when I created Launch 15 in order for me to reestablish that creative outlet. That's one of the best decisions I've ever done for me personally, because it allowed me to resume on all that creative work that preparing for a knife show gives me.
What's your fascination with Zippolighters?
I think I got my first gasoline lighter when I was 5 or 6. It was an old Ronson. And since then I acquired quite a few various brands of lighters. And there's something about these old tools that can create fire. So as a kid, fire, knives, guns, very healthy family entertainment, right? And that fascination has just always stuck with me. On my personal lighter here, I switched to a butane insert just because I got tired of when I use it maybe once a week or once every month or so, the gasoline had evaporated. Had I been using a lighter every single day, if I've been smoking or using it in my daily work, I would probably have stuck with the gasoline lighter. Here it makes sense to have the butane insert, but having access to fire is just very almost primal instinct to man, and I think I'm tapping into that with my fascination for lighters. So now I soldered it on the insignia, and now comes time to prepare and solder on the crown A. Here I really need to be careful that I don't overheat, because then the sterling silver A will just evaporate. So when I work on orders, what I will generally do is line out one of my trays here with parts for each knife that has been ordered, and then work one knife at a time in batches of 5 or 6 knives. I actually do kind of the same when I prepare for a knife show, except I don't set up one tray at a time. I will work on a bunch of Monte Carlo folders, I will work on a bunch of zero folders, I will work on a bunch of all different kinds of stuff, and it's all mixed together. And that is some of the freedom I give myself when I prepare for a show. I don't necessarily sit down and focus on this specific project for the next 3 or 5 days, but I let myself just roam around the shop. I'll do what I find most interesting and inspiring in that moment. So this really illustrates how I'm working in preparation for these online knife shows or knife shows in general. Here I have a bunch of parts lined up in trays. I have here 2 Mojos. They are pretty far from done. The handles are done. The blades needs lock fitting, all the grinding work and all the finish work. I have 2 Zeros where all the parts here are ready to be colored and tumbled. The blades needs to be finish ground and then have the final finish put on them, but they're pretty far ahead. Here I just have all the basic parts lined up for 6 casinos. They're still far from being finished, but what I do is I will go to and from all these parts and work a little on these and a little on that, and it may seem a little unstructured at times, but I know that in the end all of these will be finished for a show, not necessarily the show that I'm preparing for, but even though that maybe these 2 Mojos won't be ready for next week, I know that they will be one step ahead in the process of finishing them, so the chances of them going on to the next show is pretty good. And working like that might seem a little unstructured and maybe not 100% productive, but that's really not what's needed in that moment either. I actually need to be able to be unstructured, or at least somewhat unstructured, but bound up by a deadline. Deadlines are really hard on me, but it's also super creative. I don't know what happens in that process, but when I know that on Thursday at 5 p.m. I need to be done with everything. When I work towards the deadline, I find energy. I don't even know where it comes from. And when I know that it's a deadline Wednesday evening at 8, everything needs to be done right at that time, I find myself to be super productive in ways that I can't be on a normal day-to-day basis anyway. So preparing for these launch 15s have just always been such a pleasure, and preparing for knife shows in general always gives me so much energy, and that's what launch 15 will do to me. Now these 2 Zippos have been cleaned in acid to remove all the flux, and the next step is to prepare the surface for the next patina process. What I'm doing now is both preparing the surface for the patina, but also leaving a uniform scratch pattern all over the Zippo so that the finish on the full Zippo is just nice and even. I do that on a bristle wheel here on this really old Baldur buffing machine that I bought on eBay a number of years ago. We went into the production facility here where I have this fume cabinet because there's no vitamins in this stuff, so protect your lungs and ears and eyes and all that. Let's put up some patina on these.
So when you're doing this patination process, what are you looking for?
Basically just that I get a uniform surface with a nice color. So what I do is I remove the patina as we go, reapply, remove, reapply until I feel it looks right. It's one of those processes, it's hard to teach anybody because it's when I feel they look right? So this is usually something that I do here, even though it's a relatively simple process, but since it's controlled by my feelings rather than a set of rules, it gets a little tricky. These have been patinaed, and now I'm going to take the patina back a step with a Scotch Brite pad until I feel the look is where I want it. I'm also going to highlight the insignia and the Anso logo by just scrubbing a little bit so it stands out a little more shiny than the rest. And that's pretty much it, and then they're done. So this is one of those things that I really enjoy about making these. This is strictly hand and eye coordination, and only I know when it's done and I decide when it's done. There's no specific rules around this. If it looks cool, it's done. So it's a really nice change of pace from the very, very strict tolerances around the knives that I build. Here it's a bit more free-forming, artsy kind of work. So these lighters here has never been a stock item in my web shop. I really enjoy making these, and I make them mainly for my own satisfaction. That people love them and use them, that's just great and an extra bonus for me. I would make them regardless. I've made these and given away as gifts quite often as well. As for my other tools and gears and gadgets, I've actually been discontinuing a bunch of the gears and gadgets from my web shop recently. And again, I'm not one to complain about success, but the success of the Aros has actually meant that right now what's holding us back is mainly machine hours. So I've been forced to actually be really strict about what we produce and what we don't produce in the shop. So items like the V3 carabiner that I've been making for, I'd like to say 10 years by now, and I've made a ton of them, like thousands of them. It just doesn't make sense at this moment. Will I make another carabiner model later on? For sure. I love carabiners. I've also discontinued the Matrix, the credit card holder, mainly because it's extremely intensive in machine hours. I think one Matrix takes about 6 hours of CNC machining to produce, and it just doesn't make sense when we have people waiting for the Aros. So I discontinued a bunch of tools. That said, Launch 15 is actually a great way for me to do small sprint runs if I want to, or get the rest of inventory cleared out. For instance, I'm doing a special run of mini bars for either this Launch 15 or the next. And it's just a way for me to get rid of stock. That doesn't really sound all that cool, but in reality, I'm just forced to look at this as a business now and again as well. And I just have to get the most out of my machine hours. And right now, it's definitely Aros. This concludes this episode where I prepared Zippos for my Launch 15 online knife show. If you missed out on the knife show, you can go to my website right now and order an Aros. They are available in my web shop. Until next time, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Hit like, subscribe, tell a friend, and help this channel to grow. See you later.